Welcome to Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith here today, host of Kennedy on Fox Business. Kennedy. Also from FBN, Dagan McDowell is here. Democratic strategist Julia Roginski, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business.
FBN.
And host of Forbes on Fox, David Asman, is here, and he is outnumbered. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you. Good to see a lot of FBN folks.
I know, and we thought the guy was going to hit 20,000 by today. What happened, Sandra?
We're still watching.
It's David's fault.
No,
he's one of the brightest.
I think it's John Kerry's fault.
John Kerry.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, he's one of the brightest on FBN, y'all. David in both intellect and personality.
Amen.
Oh, my goodness.
He's a bright light.
You ever seen David in
She's
a bad
about
mood?
to attack. I know that. A compliment like that has been attacked.
Am I literally
You know me.
I know you.
FBN person here today? I'm the only one that does not work for FBN. I feel a little outnumbered.
Tell me about the Hang Sang.
All right.
I will. And the renminbi and the trade.
We got to get this going. Let's begin with what could be a new low in U.S.-Israel relations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slamming Secretary of State John Kerry's lengthy defense of the U.S. decision not to veto a UN resolution condemning Israeli settlements. Kerry yesterday tore into Israel for settlement building on land claimed by the Palestinians. Netanyahu saying Kerry's rhetoric was as, quote, unbalanced as the anti-Israeli resolution that came out of the UN.
Secretary Kerry paid lip service to the unremitting campaign of terrorism that has been waged by the Palestinians against the Jewish state for nearly a century. What he did was to spend most of his speech blaming Israel for the lack of peace by passionately condemning a policy of enabling Jews to live in their historic homeland and in their eternal capital, Jerusalem.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is also the highest-ranking Israeli leader to allege that the Obama administration was secretly behind last week's UN vote, saying Israel has, quote, absolutely incontestable evidence. Rich Edson joins us live from the State Department with the very latest here. Hey, Rich.
Good afternoon, Sandra. And this is a relationship that has been confrontational for years, and now it is as explicit as it has ever been. That between the Obama administration and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. With 3 weeks to go in office, Secretary of State John Kerry laid out the administration's view for Middle East peace. And he spent much of that talk giving a reprimand, really, to Israel over settlement building.
Some seem to believe that the U.S. friendship means the U.S. must accept any policy, regardless of our own interests, our own positions, our own words, our own principles, even after urging again and again that the policy must change. Friends need to tell each other the hard truths, and friendships require mutual respect.
Kerry added that the U.S. cannot do nothing and say nothing when they see the hope of peace slipping away. Kerry did also criticize Palestinians for what he called the glorification, essentially, of terrorism, renaming streets and public squares after terrorists. As for the Israelis, they took it nothing more than a one-sided attack.
We're not about to be swayed by mistaken policies that have caused great damage. Israelis do not need to be lectured about the importance of peace by foreign leaders.
As for the charge from the Israelis that the Obama administration was behind this resolution, Secretary of State John Kerry says that is not true. Sandra, back to you.
All right, Rich, thank you very much. David Asman.
Oof, wow. Where do you begin? First of all, for the first time in my life, it's clear that the United States is coming out on the side of terrorists as opposed to democracies. That's a very dramatic statement. But what happened with the Palestinian Authority, which used to be the PLO, by the way, one of the founders of modern-day terrorism, is they made a link-up in 2015 with Hamas, which is still registered by the State Department as a terrorist organization. They, as we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu, they named streets after terrorists. They actually award terrorists with a stipend if they kill an Israeli citizen. So this is an organization, and combined with the Palestinian Authority, that are committed to terrorism. If you listen to John Kerry's speech, about 2 hours of verbal assault against Israel. Yes, they mentioned a couple of things. He mentioned a couple of things about terrorism on the Palestinian side, but overall, it was a condemnation of Israel as though they were the aggressors rather than the terrorist organizations who are the real aggressors. answers. This is an extraordinary moment in U.S. history.
And it wasn't just Netanyahu that took to slamming John Kerry's speech. The president-elect Donald Trump took the opportunity to do so as well. Watch.
I think his speech really speaks for itself. Yeah, it speaks for itself. It was pretty obvious.
But he said that friends need to set friends straight, and that was one of the things.
If we have different views, we have to have peace. I think it set it back. But we're going to see what happens after January 20th, right? I think you're going to be very impressed.
So somewhat difficult to hear. He said, I think his speech really speaks for itself. It's pretty obvious. He ended by saying, we'll see what happens after January 20th, insinuating it's going to be much different under a Trump administration. Julie?
But what does Don King have to say about all that since he was standing right there? Look, I think this is one of those issues that really lends itself to nuance, and it's not a soundbite issue. And here's my view on this. First and foremost, I don't understand why John Kerry would do this now. It has no practical effect. Other than there's going to be a meeting in Paris that the United States may or may not be part of that's going to determine further status of these peace talks. But ultimately, it's very hard. It's almost like being a marriage counselor to a couple that's decided to divorce, right? You can't force somebody to stay together when a couple has said...
But the two sides aren't equal.
It's not even a point of whether they're equal or not. Neither side is interested in having a discussion about having a peace conference right now. You have the Israelis who are continuing to build settlements in areas that the Palestinians claim as their own. You have Palestinians who continue to incite violence against Israelis on both the Hamas side in Gaza and in the West Bank with the Palestinian Authority. You have Mahmoud Abbas, who says something very different in English than he does in Arabic to his own people about where the prospects for peace go. Neither side is interested in anything John Kerry has to say. And furthermore, what I find interesting in all of this is that you have a split within the Israeli community. You have Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, saying that he supported what John Kerry said, that he claims the majority of Israelis support what John Kerry said. My attitude about this is the following. Unless the Israelis and the Palestinians decide to, in good faith, sit down the way the Jordanians and the Israelis sat down at one point, the way that the Egyptians in 1979 with Anwar Sadat, sat down with the Israelis and said, here are the status this is the status we're going to negotiate. We're going to give up certain land for peace, the way the Egyptians did back in the 70s. That's not going to happen.
But they've already done it. They already pulled out of Gaza in 2005, and when they did, all of the Hamas folks shot rockets at Israel.
That's exactly right. 3 wars since then. 3 wars since they pulled out of Gaza.
All right, but let's talk about the damage that is being done and has been done under the current administration. Is it so damaged beyond repair that it can't come back? I mean, obviously the effort here is to box in Donald Trump ahead of him getting into the White House.
Yeah, but, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I think that Donald Trump can easily score a victory here. But what you've done is you've created so much extremism on both sides because the Palestinians are now emboldened by the UN resolution. And Israel is now so upset that they've got absolutely no desire for someone else to be the architect of a two-state solution that at this point doesn't benefit them. So, to your point, yeah, I think there are a lot of people, particularly Democratic Jews in this country, who agree with a lot of what John Kerry said and feel like his arguments were logical, but they do vehemently disagree with the UN resolution. And if the rest of the world were telling us how to do our business, I think that our leaders would react exactly as Benjamin Netanyahu did yesterday.
To David's point earlier, I don't think that this is anything new in terms of this administration coddling and pandering to terrorists and the countries and the states that support terrorism. It comes back to the fact that the president won't recognize radical Islamic terrorism. We turned our backs in the last week on Israel, where women have equal rights in a region where women don't. And then you look at the Iran deal, and a deal with a nation that is still the largest state sponsor of terror in this world, and we're sending them pallets of cash, $1.7 billion at last count. So I think that this is, you ask why now politically, because it's of a bumper sticker, because in that election season, you would have had basically commercials being run about the genocide in Syria that they turned their backs on, and the fact that now it's essentially illegal for the Jewish people to have homes in Jerusalem.
Can I just say one thing about Dagan, who is spot on in this administration's record in dealing with terrorism? terrorism. In 2011, there was something that was called the Arab Spring. Of course, it turned out to be very much not what it was advertised to be. It was supposed to be promoting democracy. Instead, it promoted terrorist groups. The United States, I think in the beginning of that, Hillary Clinton was in the State Department, then John Kerry came in. They were supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. You mentioned Anwar Sadat, the guy who did that famous peace treaty with... he was
killed by the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right. He was assassinated by the Muslim.
Good man.
And we were supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. In 2011, in Egypt, they took over. Then there was a coup to get them out. I mean, we've been supporting terrorism for a long time in this administration. What's going on?
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the talk of the collusion. I mean, you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government, charging the Obama administration for being behind the push for this resolution.
Let me say that.
They say they have ironclad evidence. Do you deny that they have that?
I have no idea. I mean, this is the same thing I would say about Russian hacking, and I've said it all along. If this exists, let's see it. Let's see some declassified version of whatever
they're
this
concerned.
evidence is.
They say that they're concerned about turning it over to the current administration because of what they would do with that.
Why?
They want to turn it over to Donald Trump,
Great.
showing that they've already pretty much established a relationship with
I want to see it.
And given up on this
But
one,
I mean, wait a second. I want to see it. I want to see some declassified version of what this evidence is. I mean, you have a very serious allegation by the Prime Minister of Israel. I think his people deserve to see what this evidence is. I think we deserve to see it. I'm not asking for classified information. I'm asking for some.
What about the conversation between the vice president and?
He's denying it. I mean, that's the problem. The problem is you have
but they've already proven that the conversation exists.
You have one person making an allegation versus another person saying the allegation is not true. Look, here's what I would say about this, and I say this as somebody. Listen, my grandmother lived in an area of Jerusalem named Gilo, which is considered to be occupied territory. It is a part of East Jerusalem that the Israelis consider to be part of Greater Jerusalem, but everybody else, aside from the United States, the European Union, Japan, the United Nations, all consider to be a settlement. She lived and died for the last 25 years of her life on that land. And I spent all my summers there as a child. So I can tell you this, as somebody who's been there and who's seen it, it is a very complicated issue because unlike
it's not, Julie, it's not so complicated. It's Hamas and the Palestinian Authority want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth.
To your point, to go a little bit further with your analogy, you talk about a couple who's already decided to get divorced, going to a marriage counselor. One of those people in that marriage is writing books on how not only marriage is the most deceitful and horrific institution on the planet, but how all wives should be killed. Okay. I mean, that's tantamount to what the Palestinian Authority has done.
Let me finish my point. If you don't do something about these settlements, and I'm not suggesting that particular part of the settlement needs to be given back to the Palestinians, but if you don't establish some sort of area for them to have their own homeland, eventually, demographically, Israel will cease to be a majority Jewish democratic state. It will become, because of birth rates, majority Palestinian. And so if the Israelis want to continue having a majority democratic Jewish state, they have to do something about this. We can bang our fists against the wall about the Palestinians. I agree that these Palestinians are
not just the Palestinians. It's Hamas. We are supporting terrorists over a democratic ally, and that's wrong.
All right.
Period.
We appreciate all perspectives. Thank you. We have to go. And Secretary Kerry's blistering speech on Israel fueling some bipartisanship on Capitol Hill. A pushback to defend Israel coming from Congress. Some even calling to defund the United Nations. How likely that could happen, and should it? Plus, the White House wants to send Vladimir Putin a message. Don't mess with American democracy. Sanctions against Moscow could be coming today as punishment for election hacking. But the timing of it all, raising new questions. And after the show, always remember you can join our live chat by clicking on the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered or go to facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. I'm sure this conversation will continue there and much more. And you can also tweet us your thoughts. We will see you after the show. New sanctions targeting Russia could be announced as early as today. The Obama administration will reportedly unveil new measures aimed to punish Moscow and possibly President Vladimir Putin himself for hacking that Secretary of State Kerry says had serious consequences.
All of the cyber attacks that are taking place, but particularly the Russian one, had a profound impact on our system, on our political process, it invaded the space of our election. The releasing on a regular basis of one party's stolen emails had an impact.
President-elect Trump is critical of the U.S. intelligence community's findings that Russia was behind the hacking. He says it's time to move on.
I think we ought to get on with our lives. I think that computers have complicated lives very greatly. The whole, age of computer has made it where nobody knows exactly what's going on.
Time to get on with our lives. All right, let's address Donald Trump first. And
I thought you were going to say Don King, who was standing next to him.
Come on, guys.
All of this. The tale of two Dons.
Right.
No, Donald Trump, though. He says it's time to move on. What do you think? Should we be doing this?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult for the CIA and other intel operations that we have to reveal stuff, even if it's the final data that they have, without giving up their sources. There are human sources and there's technical data that the CIA used to come to the conclusion, whatever conclusion it was, about the Russian hacking. Both of those things, both of our human intel, and that means people could die if we give up names and stuff, and the technical stuff we would be revealing to the Russians. They could kind of re-engineer it to figure out how we figured that out. We would be revealing to them how we get information from them. We want to keep as much of that secret as possible. Congress and the executive powers have ways to do that, but if you release it publicly, it's kind of risky.
I don't know. I mean, Dagan, we've been chatting about this for some time. You think we should be punishing them?
Punishing, yes, but as you heard Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday saying, wait for sanctions, that Russia has to pay a price for the hacking, because it's not just what we saw in the last year, it's what's been going on for years that the Obama administration has turned a blind eye to. Mm-hmm. So you wait for a new Congress and a new president to take action against Russia. But in the meantime, because of Russia's power in terms of the purse, oil prices have shot up, Sandra, right? Almost 50% this year because of the agreement between the OPEC and non-OPEC producers, including Russia, to cut production of 1.8 million barrels a day. So right now, Russia's in the catbird seat. I say, new administration, give our energy producers a lot more freedom to pump a lot more oil, and that ultimately will help us have more power over Russia.
All right, and so going back to John Kerry's words, just the idea that this hacking had a profound impact on our election. Do you even agree with that premise to begin with?
I don't know if it did or didn't, but the fact that they tried and the fact that they did it, and they did hack into our electoral system, deserves punishment.
But what does our electoral system mean? What do you mean by that?
It means that they hacked into the DNC in order to release information that the DNC was proprietary to the DNC. It means that they hacked into John Podesta's email to release information that was proprietary to the Clinton campaign. It means that whether they were successful or not in swaying the outcome of the election, they sure as hell tried to do that. Look, Vladimir Putin's not our friend, and every American president since George Bush has made this mistake. Bush made it, Obama made it, and now Donald Trump is making it, where they think they're going to come to an accommodation with an authoritarian despot whose raison d'etre in life is to bring back the glory of the Soviet Union. This is not a man who will ever do business with us. There is a way to punish Russia without punishing the Russians. You expand the Magnitsky Act. You essentially say that Vladimir Putin is sheltering a tremendous amount of his own wealth and the wealth of all the oligarchs around him in the West. You cut off their access to their money. You prevent them from visiting their money and their real estate in New York or in London. And you go after his inner circle that way without penalizing average Russians who are suffering at his hands as well. And by the way, the Russian economy is in the tank. They're a petrostate. The oil goes up, their standard of living goes up. But what Vladimir Putin is doing, this is straight out of the Soviet playbook. This is actually something I know a little about. The day that your own people start struggling economically and start getting upset with the way their life is going, you start these adventures abroad, you start creating these straw men about the United States and the West are trying to get you, and as a result,
that's what they do in North Korea as well.
Yeah, and as a result, don't look at the man behind the curtain. Look at the West. Look at the Americans. They're the ones that are creating hell on earth for us. He is an awful human being, and he deserves to be punished for all of his behavior.
Okay, and all of that is absolutely true. I don't dispute any of it. The thing that I find very curious is that John Kerry, who is, not only our chief diplomat, but he's speaking for the federal government, saying that the Russians hacked into our election. And, he's basically saying that's the equivalent of Russians hacking into voting machines and changing the outcome. Okay, the John Podesta emails, what do you think the average person took away from the John Podesta emails? No, honestly,
I'll tell you.
Versus the emails that came out over an over year-long investigation of Hillary Clinton's server. I would argue that the stuff that came out about her, from her, by her, the classified information, was much more damning than hearing that Donna Brazile might have given her some questions in a debate.
Well, first of all, and this is by virtue of not just my opinion, but
how
the
is
opinion,
that
I'll tell
quantifiably
you,
changing the election?
I'll tell you.
You take all of this information, all of these perceptions. You have so many different elements that go into creating people's opinions.
Do you know why President Obama and everybody in his administration, why they did nothing about this until now? Because they didn't think it was a big deal.
They did.
What if it's not just the Russians?
They put sanctions on the Russians.
But what if it's not just the Russians? What if we stop looking at other actors who might have gotten into these systems and leaked embarrassing information? What if it's not just the Russians?
Joe Biden himself said he didn't think that it had an impact on the election. He said that beforehand. And what did President Obama do? He sat across from Vladimir Putin and said, cut it out.
Are you guys excusing the Russian behavior by saying
that's the very first thing I said to you, and I said, look in places other than Russia. It gives you a false sense of security, and also, I think you're seeing a bit of sleight of hand here from the Obama administration because our cybersecurity sucks.
I can't wait for January 20th. That's all I have to say.
Really?
You guys,
January 20th.
Please formulate an opinion on this subject. President-elect Trump appears to be painting two different pictures of how the transition is actually really, truly going. 1 minute, he says President Obama is throwing up roadblocks. The next, he says it's smooth sailing. So which is it? Plus, some in Congress want to send the UN a clear message. Change your tone on Israel. More growing support on Capitol Hill to pull all U.S. cash from the world body in the wake of that controversial resolution. But could that actually happen?
Welcome back to the couch. This is Outnumbered. President-elect Trump apparently doing a quick about face on the state of the transition. He began yesterday taking to Twitter, to vent his frustration with the Obama administration, tweeting, quote, doing my best to disregard the many inflammatory President O statements and roadblocks, thought it was going to be a smooth transition. Not. He later tweeted, who let the dogs out and what's up? Later, Mr. Trump saying this to reporters at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. Listen.
He called me. We had a very, very good talk generally about things. He was in Hawaii. And it was a very, very nice call. And I actually thought we covered a lot of territory, a lot of good territory.
Are you satisfied with the transition thus far?
Well, our staffs are getting along very well. And I'm getting along very well with him, other than a couple of statements that I responded to. And we talked about it and smiled about it. And nobody's ever going to know because we're never going to be going against each other in that way.
All right, very good. David Asman, I have to ask you first. Is it rougher than gravel or smoother than creamy peanut butter?
Well, the point is Donald Trump as a business guy is used to dealing with difficult situations. One minute you're negotiating with a guy calling him an SOB, then the next minute you got your arm around him saying, this is my partner for life. I mean, that's what he does for a living. That's what he's used to doing. Yeah. So he does, obviously, looks two-faced. On one hand, in the morning he says this, in the afternoon he says that. But that's the way business people are. That's what Americans voted for. They wanted somebody who's going to be able to get the job done, even with people that he doesn't like and that the United States has problems with.
Well, Julie, there seem to be two layers here. You know, on one layer, they're both making yo mama jokes, and they're very upset with each other. But then when it comes down to the practical transition of power, their teams seem to be mature and getting along. Am I reading too much into that as an eternal optimist?
I hope you're right. The weird thing about Donald Trump to me is I've been not very nice to him ever since he declared his candidacy. I guarantee you, if I went on TV today and said he's great, he'd be like, Julie's the best. Like, it's unbelievable how easily flattered he is.
Try it.
You're the best, Donald Trump. Merry Christmas. I've been wrong about you all along. Now tweet something nice about me. And he probably would, because that's the problem with Donald Trump. He's so easily flattered. And it's, I don't know.
Do you really think he takes flattery that seriously?
Yes.
He's had decades of experience in learning how to absorb that and dissect the truth from the non-truths in the flattery comments.
Look at what he said about Putin. He's like, Putin called me a genius. I love this guy.
Okay, but conversely,
really
people who go into meetings with Donald Trump, they say the same thing. They say, they go in bombastic, negative, and very pessimistic, and they come out going, you know what? He's actually a really great guy.
They come out charmed.
Yeah, I think he really charmed.
Why do you? why do you think Mitt Romney met with him multiple times and even broke bread with him?
He wanted a job.
Frog legs.
No, but again, this goes both ways. And by the way, you can eat a gravel sandwich as long as it has a lot of peanut butter in it. So that's really what's going on.
God, that's just
this is like Kierkegaard McDowell today. This is very deep.
But Kennedy, they're actually not getting along. Tom Perez, who wants to head the DNC, running the Labor Department, called the actions by the Trump transition team illegal. He went out publicly because they wanted information about some of the employees. The same thing happened, which Trump had said, the administration, the transition team said it was a mistake, but they wanted information about some employees or the actions of some employees.
And so there are roadblocks.
Underneath there's tension.
Right. The Obama administration clearly is putting up roadblocks. That's what this UN resolution vote was all about. There have been a bunch of last-minute decisions by the EPA to stop drilling. And they are trying as best as they can to put roadblocks because they know that Trump is going to try to dismantle just about everything that Obama did.
I think there's a difference between legacy preservation and actually wanting a smooth transition, because that's, and the president has gone out of his way to talk about, especially during the final week of the election, how in this country, we do not dismiss the results. We do not have third-party candidates paying and, trying to get money online to fund recalls.
He was trying to be like George Bush treated the President Obama and the Obama family in the transition, but he's so angry about the loss, the president, and he's so angry about
legacy.
Trump.
It's not even the loss, it's the legacy.
It's about the Trump wrecking ball. The Trump wrecking ball made of brass with Trump written on the side of it that's going to go right through everything the president's done the last 8 years.
Can we just concede that we have one president at a time and until January 20th at noon or whenever the inauguration takes
but
place?
Obama put himself out there during the campaign.
That Obama can do whatever he wants in terms of regulation and speeches
but Obama's
and
already
policy,
said during the campaign, he said this election is about me. Vote for Hillary because it's about my legacy. He said that.
My takeaway from Julie, though, is that she wants people to hold grudges and never listen to your opposition. I think that's one of the most.
That's not anybody else.
I think that's probably one of the most respected things about Donald Trump during this transition process. His ability to open the door and listen to people who opposed him, and I don't know, give everybody a fair shake,
including Kanye West. Kanye and his wife probably gave Hillary Clinton millions of dollars.
Donald Trump was in bed with the KKK in an unprecedented blitz for Hillary Clinton. Let's move on to renewed calls for the United States to pull billions of dollars in funding from the UN after the Obama administration allowed a controversial vote to go forward condemning Israeli settlement building. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer among the Democrats joining Republicans expressing outrage at Secretary Kerry's defense of that move, which broke with decades of tradition in which the U.S. defended our ally Israel from UN censure. And Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert urging Congress to retaliate.
I've got a bill that hopefully will be drafted by Friday anyway. Two things. One, we don't give a dime to the UN until they rescind that resolution. And people are saying, oh, they'll never do that. Fine. They don't need our help to be anti-Semitic. And then the other is to prevent even one dime, making it a crime to use any government money to recognize Palestine as an independent country or state.
Former presidential candidate Mike Huckabee also weighing in, saying the U.S. could make better use of its UN budget.
We ought to take that money that's going to the UN and make it available to veterans who have served under the U.S. flag and make sure they get the benefits they need. We are getting zero benefits. We're getting embarrassed by the actions of the UN. That's money that ought to be spent on American servicemen and servicewomen, and I hope Donald Trump makes it one of the first acts of his presidency.
David, 25% of the UN's total regular and peacekeeping budget. We fund $3 billion annually.
Right.
Is it time to pull it?
Sure. Partly because we don't even know how much they actually spend because they're getting money from all different sources. Claudia Rosette, who's the best UN watcher that I know, has tried to figure out how the UN budgets things. They can't. It's bad enough when you're trying to figure out how a government funds things because government expense. But this is a collection of over 100 different governments, almost 200 governments together. It's totally out of control. I think we should move the headquarters from New York to Yemen. If we did that, suddenly you would find out their expenses would be cut in half. Just one suggestion.
I want to get to a tweet from Donald Trump that about this very issue. The United Nations, this is what Trump tweeted, has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together, talk, and have a good time. So sad. That's actually being quite kind given the level of corruption that we've seen in the UN. Let's just look at the Oil for Food program, where the leadership at the UN essentially presided over a looting of this charitable program by Saddam Hussein, more than $1 billion.
Yeah, look what the UN has done dishonestly with climate change alone, and some of those laughable panels that rest on research instead of employing actual skepticism and science. I don't have a problem at all with pulling federal funding from the UN. I don't think we need to be investing in this one world government nonsense. I really don't. I don't think it's in our best interest. And you know, Mike Huckabee talks about taking money from the UN and giving it to veterans. Why not take money from the F-35 program and give it to veterans? I don't have a problem with that either.
Money talks and
what?
Walks. Well, you said SOB earlier.
I did.
What walks, Dagan? Look, there may be some merit to this. I don't think I'm not knee-jerk or reflexive about the fact that we need to keep funding the UN at the levels that they're at. I think the idea of the UN was some Justice League type scenario where you'd have all these great people and countries getting together and trying to, have peace, justice, and not the American way, but the international way. Unfortunately, the structure of the UN and the Security Council alone was built on a post-World War II premise where World War II allies, who are not today the greatest people and countries on earth, China, Russia, have a large say over world events. So for us to work, I think it's very hard. I'm not opposed to sitting with countries that we don't agree with. In fact, we should do that. But when you have people like the Chinese and the Russians having a very outsized influence on world events in a country like Germany, which is still being punished for its acts 75 years ago, and therefore is not, or Japan, which are Western allies, not having as much of a say, I have a problem with that. And so I think there's some merit to discussing this. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's something that we should consider.
We need to rethink a lot of stuff. Maybe pull our bases from Japan and Germany as well.
And an unlikely source that is rethinking a lot of these things. Did you see the response from Senator Chuck Schumer on all of this? I mean, that came in last night, and that was pretty scathing response to John Kerry's speech. I mean, he said while he may not have intended it, I fear in his speech and action at the UN, he has an emboldened extremists on both sides.
The last time the UN did anything good was in 1991 when it got together in order to kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. We got George Bush, the first George Bush put that coalition together. They were able to get Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait in a couple of weeks. But that was the last time that the UN got together to do something specific. Maybe he could have done it without the UN, but he used the UN to do it.
Meantime, they've been partying on our dime.
Growing speculation about a 2020 presidential run by Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. The progressive Democrat is joining the Senate Armed Services Committee in the new year. Some saying she's making the move to bolster her credentials to be commander-in-chief. But when asked about it, she told a local Massachusetts TV station a bid in the next cycle was not on her, quote, radar screen. And when pressed if she'd consider a run in the future, she hit back with, oh, come on, and forgot to add, of course. This, of course, on the heels of retiring Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid, giving a blunt assessment of the Democrats who may run in 2020, including Warren. When asked by an aide who he would support, New York Magazine quotes Reid as saying, it depends on who's running. It appears we're going to have an old folks home. We've got Elizabeth Warren. She'll be 71. Biden will be 78. Bernie Sanders will be 79. And Harry Reid is going to run again in 6 years because he's going to live forever.
Age is just a number, Kennedy.
Dean Heller. Of course it's just a number. I mean, I think Harry Reid is being incredibly ageist here. And if you look at the weak bench that the Democrats have, and admittedly a lot of Democrats would say the same thing, Elizabeth Warren looks quite spry compared to Hillary Clinton.
Well, first of all, Elizabeth Warren will still be younger than Donald Trump in 4 years. And secondly, let's talk about the amazing Republican bench the Republicans had This past year, you had young Marco Rubio, little Marco, you had Ted Cruz, you had Carly Fiorina, this huge
Don't
diverse...
forget Jeb Bush. Please clap.
Jeb Bush, yes, exclamation point, Jeb. And look who they ended up with, Donald Trump. And I say that by way of saying you never know who's going to emerge.
But at least they put forward a deeper bench. I mean, where's the deep bench?
Well, let me say this.
Martin O'Malley is quite a contender, Sam. Martin O'Malley needs to take his shirt off more if he wants to get more votes.
Okay.
Oh.
In 2000, when I was depressed and heavily drinking after George Bush got elected, who knew about a guy named Barack Obama? Remember? Nobody knew this little state senator named Barack Obama from Illinois. Nobody thought about him. And then 4 years later, he gave a speech at the convention. He got on people's radar screens. And 8 years later, he's president.
All right, but 4 years from now, who do we have on the radar screen?
That's my point. It could be some guy who's a state senator from some state that we don't think about, or it could be Elizabeth Warren. I mean, you never know who's going to emerge. 4 years ago, did we really think that Donald Trump was going to ever be the Republican nominee, never mind president? Of course not.
President at the age of 70. The oldest president. It's not the age, though. It's the ideas.
Right.
It's the ideas.
Thank you.
And the ideas are being rejected by middle America. The only people who are drawn to the ideas of Liz Warren and all the other progressives that are running are the people on the coast. And the people in the middle of the country say, forget it. It ain't coincidental that,
count?
what is it, 34?
No, we don't.
I believe that 34 of the states are controlled now by Republicans. Only 5 of the states are controlled, the legislature controlled by Democrats. 34 versus 5. And that is growing. So Democrats, if they want to shoot themselves in both feet, they've already shot themselves in one foot. They could be cripples by shooting themselves all over by continuing to go with the ideas. Again, if Keith Ellison is the head of the DNC, if he becomes head of the DNC, a guy who's an anti-Semite, represents the ideas of the progressives that are losing all over the country, fine. God bless him. Go ahead and do it.
Do you think that an Elizabeth Warren will develop, to your point, some connection to the real working man and working woman in this country in the next 4 years?
Because she was getting $300,000 for teaching one course at Harvard.
As though it's a form of populism. That is what she's trying to sell.
But
the question is, will that have mainstream purchase?
No.
So far, it's been very intriguing. Look at Bernie Sanders, who won Michigan.
But they believe
Bernie Sanders won 23 states in the primary.
But you know what?
He was against the elite establishment, though. That's the point.
But telling people that $15 minimum wage is the solution to wage stagnation in this country, people ultimately believe in the American dream of owning their own lives and spending their own money rather than handing it to somebody like Elizabeth Warren, because she knows better. Yeah. She knows better how to spend my money.
That's the basis of her philosophy. Government knows better than you, therefore government should run your life.
And if she wants to win anything, she needs to work on her speech delivery, because she's worse than Hillary Clinton.
Well, I'm telling you, a lot of people were upset because the election cycle was interminable this last time around. She's got 4 years to run, and she's going to start now, and she's going to attack Donald Trump every chance she gets with that ultimate goal in mind.
She started on the campaign trail with Hillary Clinton, and that nasty woman thing that she did hurt Hillary.
And speaking of nasty woman, actually, not at all. Let's make a nice, smooth transition to President-elect Donald Trump, taking credit for thousands of jobs to men and women, none of them nasty, returning to the U.S. As economists say, he's delivering hope, and with that, confidence. But how much credit can he really take? We will discuss and debate next.
You're welcome for the tide, the sun, the sky. Hey, it's okay, you're welcome. I'm just an ordinary guy. What can I say? You're welcome for the tide, the sun.
Elect Donald Trump taking credit for Sprint moving 5,000 offshore jobs back to the United States. Watch.
Because of what's happening and the spirit and the hope, I was just called by the head people at Sprint, and they're going to be bringing 5,000 jobs back to the United States. They're taking them from other countries. They're bringing them back to the United States. And also OneWeb, a new company, is going to be hiring 3,000 people. So that's very exciting.
Sprint later saying the jobs were part of a previously announced commitment predating the election, but adding they look forward to working with Mr. Trump to create even more jobs in the U.S. Meantime, the president-elect tweeting a link to a Politico article in which economists credit him for sending consumer confidence to a fresh 15-year high. One economist telling Politico, quote, elections always give confidence a boost. There's a sense of relief that it's behind us. There does seem to be something to the Trump bump. Okay, so if elections always give it a bump, why wasn't it at 15? Whatever. Okay. So do you think there's anything to the Trump bump?
Absolutely. As far as the jobs, that's a different story, but he is responsible for consumer confidence jumping to all-time highs. We had a President Obama, who was telling us, y'all got to get used to living at 2% growth for the rest of your life, essentially, for as long as the eye could see. Donald Trump is saying 4% growth this year, in 2017, as soon as he takes office. That kind of optimism rubs off, yeah.
Wow, you know what else that does? Sets up really high expectations. So I hope, honestly, and I sincerely mean
expectations are important in terms of an economy getting moving again.
They are the reality. However, the reality is more important. And so I hope you're right. I hope we do have 4% growth. I hope we have 6% growth.
You'll be making more money. Don't worry.
Listen, I'm thrilled about the market. I'm making a ton of money. I feel bad for the people who are expecting manufacturing jobs to come back because the market's not doing anything for them.
I
invested gold.
Some jobs are coming back.
Have you been watching Fox News commercials too much?
All day long. Because I sleep so peacefully on my MyPillow, knowing what's in my safe.
But people feeling better can actually lift an economy.
Yes.
The boost in confidence is equal to roughly a 4% increase in consumer spending, which is 70% of the U.S. economy. Now it's got to happen. Now, President-elect Trump is going to have to deliver on a corporate tax cut and income tax reform for individuals and a rollback in regulations. I would caution, though, and I've said this about every president since I've been a financial journalist, do not talk about the stock market. Don't brag too much about economic indicators and take credit for them, because when things go badly, then what are you going to do?
Okay, but it's like
then there'll be more blame.
We're in the period where it's like having a great, big, beautiful wedding, and you hope that it sets up a lovely, long, healthy marriage. And, you know, the marriage has yet to come with this administration, like the years of hard work, to your point. But also the thing I like about this is Donald Trump hasn't even been inaugurated, and he's taking credit for all these preliminary successes. And it doesn't matter if Sprint made this decision 15 months ago. The fact that it's happening now, the perception that people have is like, oh, great, more people have jobs. It also allows banks to loan money, businesses to hire people with that sort of optimism. And I hated that Obama blamed Bush for everything, for his entire first administration.
Even now. 7.5 years later.
A company can change their mind based on the outcome of election. They could have certainly changed their plans. They did not. But Sprint did, or Donald Trump said Sprint called them and said they're going to be bringing these jobs back. So I'm confused at why people are picking on Donald Trump for taking credit for this when Sprint says it was already in the books. I mean, can't he still?
Sprint wants the good PR, but they don't want him to get the credit. They know he's going to talk about it.
Well, wait a second. How does he get the credit if this is a decision that was made back in October? Did Sprint somehow have a magic ball the rest of us didn't, that Donald Trump was going to win this election? Because back in October, I don't think Sprint or most of us expected that Donald Trump was going to win this election.
He will use props as he always has, and he'll come out on the bright side of this, I guarantee.
I think these companies are using him for the publicity because they know he'll tweet about it.
Sprint needs customers. By the way, guess what Sprint shares have done since President Donald Trump was elected? They're up 40%.
Whoa.
We're outnumbered in just a moment. All right. Thank you, David Asman.
Thank you for having me. By the way, Buffy the Vampire Slayer likes the show?
Yes, she loves it. Big fan.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know
we'll discuss it on OT.
We'll discuss that on OT. Please join us. We are staying right here for Outnumbered Overtime on the web. And find us on Facebook at facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. It's tons of fun happening now. Starts right now.